Welcome to this tutorial on the Market Footprint Expert Advisor. Feel free to pause and rewind the video at any stage if you wish to review any points that I've previously discussed. In this tutorial, we're going to discuss the function of the Expert Advisor, the use of the forum for support, the installation of the advisor, user inputs, the use of set files, collecting backtest data, backtesting and optimization, and finally trading with the Expert Advisor. So firstly, we'll deal with the function of the Expert Advisor. The Expert Advisor is able to test for matching profitable periods during the day from a 5-minute period up to a suggested maximum of 240 minutes for correlation in either the same direction or the opposite direction. Previous period duration and the trade period duration do not need to be the same length necessarily. For example, a previous period from say 2:20 a.m. in the morning to 2:45 a.m. in the morning has a strong correlation to an opposite direction trade from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. Now, this has been determined by backtesting and optimization and simply gives you profitable windows of trading. We're going to now discuss the forum for support. I've created this forum out of a need for commercial vendors to provide support to customers. It's not only for myself, it's open to all commercial vendors. It is a general forum, so it's suitable for everybody. I do have all the normal subjects which are being discussed here. And of course, under Expert Advisors is the support for the Market Footprint Expert Advisor. We're going to go ahead now and discuss the installation of the Expert Advisor itself. Now, after purchase of the Expert Advisor, you will be redirected to a link where you can download this particular file, which is called marketfootprint.zip. It needs to be unzipped, of course, so to do that, we'll highlight it by single clicking or double clicking, depending on your preference, and extracting all the files. Just select the default directory, which would be underneath the downloads directory. Here you can see the unzipped files. We've got two files, an exe4 and an ex4 and an MQ4. The MQ4 file is the source code, which is included with this Expert Advisor. It's not normally included, but I have included it to give you an indication of the code that I use to develop the Expert Advisor, whether you be a budding programmer or a fully fledged programmer. If you click on the set files directory, you'll see 5 example set files. What we're going to do is go ahead and perform this installation. We'll go back to the main directory, select these two market footprint files, copy them into the buffer. At this point, we'd start MetaTrader 4, navigate to the, I'll just move this over a bit so you can see what we're doing. Navigate to the data folder area, select MQL4, navigate to experts, and we're going to copy these into this experts directory. So there's your two market footprint experts. We'll close that off. We go back to our file system. Go to the set files area. We're going to copy these 5 example set files. And back to our MetaTrader 4, select File, Open Data Folder. Now these need to go into 2 particular areas. One is under MQL4, it's called the presets directory. I'll copy them into there. Go back to the main directory, and also they're copied in the tester directory for backtesting and optimization. So they're residing in that tester directory. Close that off. Just move this back into the middle again. We need to refresh our Expert Advisors by right-clicking, click on Refresh. You can see now that the Market Footprint Expert Advisor is now showing in our list of Expert Advisors. Right, that completes the installation procedure. We'll now go in and discuss the user input. So the best way to get to that is we'll use Strategy Tester. I'll just move that over to show you what's going on. Select the View command and move down to Strategy Tester and click on that. Let's move that back to the center. Now, when Strategy Tester first opens, you may not necessarily have the Market Footprint Expert Advisor selected, so you use your drop down to double click the Market Footprint Expert Advisor. You can use whatever symbol you like for back testing. We'll use Euro USD, but there is a drop down on the right hand side to select whatever you like. The model we're going to use is open prices only. This model is quite safe to use because the Expert Advisor does control bar opening and closing. So there is the option to use the other models, and we will discuss later on the use of every tick model. At this point, we'll just leave it on the open prices model. Make sure use date is selected and select the start date, which is normally, well, I advocate the last 3 months. So if it's sitting on by default 2002, the quickest way to get to the last 3 months is to click on the today and then just navigate back 3 months, and we'll use the 1st of June to the end of August. That's a 3-month period. Spread, I suggest you use 20, which is indicative of a 2 pip spread. A pip, if you're using euro, is 0.0001 of a dollar. The Expert Advisor should be used on 5-minute charts. That will become apparent as we get further into the video. If we click on Expert Properties, we will get the input window pop up. There's quite a number of inputs. We will discuss these in detail. Firstly, and we're talking about the value column now, which is the actionable column when you're actually executing the Expert Advisor within the chart. Magic number, well, the default value is 456,300. You can use whatever number you like, but just be mindful that you need a unique value for each particular chart that you use the Expert Advisor on. Base currency is the currency in which you carry out trading with your broker. If you're in Great Britain, it might be the Great Britain pound. If you're in Australia, it could be the Australian dollar. Just one note on this, that if you're using a currency pair for trading, which does not mention your own particular currency pair, just make sure that you have the related currency pair. In the case of, say, AUD, and you're trading on USD, that you have Euro AUD currency pair enables in the symbols list that you're using. There are 4 dates here. The format for the input of dates is on the helpline above. These dates relate to changeover dates for daylight savings time. The 2 in the middle are the most previous changeover to either start of daylight saving or the end of daylight saving, and the next change. The ones at each end are the second most previous and the second forwards. Wager mode is preset at 0, which is percentage of equity. It is suggested 2%, which seems to be the standard for sound money management. If you're going to use fixed lot size, where that setting is 1, you'd leave the equity percentage at 0 and select whatever fixed lot size you prefer. Stop loss and take profit, self-explanatory. They are in pips. Stop loss is a trailing stop loss. Wager increase multiple. Now, in this particular scenario, which is an already optimized scenario, it has been set to 2, but the default value is 1, and 1 represents no increase in wager after losing wages. Now, there is a tutorial within the forum which discusses money management in detail, and the wager increase multiple is discussed in that area. As I mentioned here, it's set at 2, which represents a 2-fold or a double increase in wager on a successive losing wager. Now, there are safeguards built into the program which limits that to a maximum of 20% of your equity. If you lose at that point, it reverts back to your initial wager. Previous start hours and minutes, 4 figures here. These can be optimized. Of course, you'll see the optimization settings out to the right, and similarly for trade start and stop hours and minutes. There is a figure here which limits the, and you can change this to the setting of your desire, which limits the maximum size of the period that you're going to use for the look back. This figure here is the minimum previous PIP result, means that you're not going to review anything which is, say, a 0.5% PIP gain, because it won't be meaningful. In this particular optimization is set at 5 PIP gain or loss. So I mentioned these are the actual periods for the stop and start of the actual trade, and if you attach the EA to a chart, that will be the point at which the trade will happen, which in this case is 1000 hours MetaTrader time. The options to include particular days of the week, by default they're all set to be included. If you want to exclude Mondays, you change that from a 1 to a 0. We'll just move down a little bit. Trade direction, it simply means that the trade, when open, will either be in the same direction or the opposite direction to the previous trade. In this case, it's going to open in the opposite direction, so that's set at 1. For the same direction, you'd set that to 0. The comments, well, that appears in your trade log. The column comments is not necessarily enabled by default, so you'd need to right-click in the header area and enable the comments column to be displayed to display these comments. Let's now have a look at the set files themselves. Now, to load a particular set file, you use the load button, which is this button here. So let's click on the load button, and you can see we're in the tester directory because we're dealing with backtesting and optimization. You can see the 5 files that we uploaded in the installation. Now, the example ones are a backtest and optimization for all times during the day, a backtest and optimization for periods on Fridays in New York where you get release of significant news, and it's normally half an hour after the open of trade. So the settings in that are relevant to determining trade periods after that news release. And we'll deal with this one initially, which is simply a set file which reviews previous hours of the day for opportunities which are matched to current hours of the day. And it could be an hour between, say, 2 and 3 in the morning, which is heavily or more profitably related to a trade between, say, 9 and 10 in the morning or 9 and 11 in the morning. The periods don't have to match up. They could be a 1 hour previous, and in this mentioned example, 2 hours active trade period. Trades in the London rush hour period, that's normally the hour before the London market open, and similar for the New York rush hour period, which is the hour between 8 and 9 a.m. in the morning in New York time. More discussion later on those. Let's have a look at this one, market footprint hourly set. So we've loaded that one, and I just want to draw your attention to a couple of items here. Firstly, these start and stop hours, and you can see that I've already run this optimization previously, but we are going to run through it again. It says that the start hour is 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Now, that obviously is after the market is open, but you need to bear in mind that we are relating this to the actual market time, which is on your MT4. Just take these out for a moment. This market watch time. Now, in my situation, and I'm in Australia, my platform is GMT or UST +3 at the moment. Now, we are in a daylight savings period in both in New York and in London, and this is GMT +3 hours. Now, once the daylight savings period is finished towards the end of October, that will revert back to GMT +2. So the market watch time then will be 04:11 and so on. Now, you need to take particular note when you're backtesting to backtest wholly within a particular period, be it a daylight savings period or a non-daylight savings period. So we're backtesting between, say, end of June and end of August, which is during the daylight savings period. But the times you will need to alter, well, you won't need to alter them. The correct times will come out when you use your own platform, but even though my particular situation says to open trades at this particular time of between 10 and 13. If, for instance, my current platform was in London, it might be those figures would need to be adjusted to 7 to 10. In other words, you need to be mindful that if you're going to use the presets that I provide, that you adjust them to the time period relevant to your own trading platform. Now, just coming back to the optimization part of it, I've already put in these figures, and we're looking at hourly, an hourly optimization. In other words, we're looking for hourly periods in the past during the day, which are matched by profitable trades at hourly periods or hourly periods beyond the past period. So we're going to optimize between 0 and 23 for this previous start hour, 0 to 23 for the previous stop hour. The step size is the iteration step. So it will go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on through to 23. Same for the previous stop hour. We're then going to look at the same matching periods for the start hours and stop hours of the actual trades. Now, the code is built into the expert advisor to ignore periods, obviously, which are prior to the stop of the previous trade period. So if the stop of the previous trade period is, say, for argument's sake, 4 a.m., we'll only look at trade periods from 4 a.m. onwards when it iterates through these periods. There's no optimization of start minute or stop minutes because we're going to use the whole hour, so they're set at 0 with no optimization, similarly with trade start and trade stop. Maximum previous period, well, it's preset here at 240 minutes. Simply means we'll look at all periods from 1 up to 4 hours. Previous PIP result, this is simply saying here that we're looking for a minimum PIP result in the previous trade of 5 pips. If it's less than 5 pips, we're going to ignore it. So that's that setting there. Coming down to this setting here, maximum trade period, once again, we're going to say we'll look at up to 4 hour periods in the past, from 1 to 4 hour periods in the past, and also 1 to 4 hour periods beyond the past period for the opening of trades. And the idea of the optimization is that we're looking for profitable periods from back testing. The other thing, of course, to note here is that, and we're leaving all the days enabled, is the trade direction. We obviously need to look at opposite trades as well as the same direction trade. So we're going to iterate from 0 in steps of 1 to 1. So that's same direction and opposite direction. So once we've loaded this, these parameters in, we click on OK. Now to perform the optimization, bearing in mind we're using open prices only, we need to check the optimization box. And I'm going to click on Start. I will pause the video whilst this is optimizing, but we'll get this underway. Now by clicking on Start, you can see a number of things have come up. Firstly, there's a discussion of how long this optimization is going to take. Now, at the moment, it's doing a bit of thinking, but it's moving back to around about 7 minutes for the optimization. Will vary according to the speed of your processor. This is an i5, so an average strength processor. If you've got a lower strength, that process could be up to 15 minutes. It's fairly fast because you're using the open process model. Over here, you can notice that the figure in brackets is the actual number of potential iterations according to the parameters that we've set in the step size. It's fairly large, 262 million. You would think this would take forever, but because of the genetic algorithm within MT4, it will, in actual fact, be limited to around 10,500 iterations. Now, if you're interested in how it gets from 262 million to 10,500, I draw your attention to this website, which has a discussion on this. And I'm just going to move this down a little bit so you can see the web address. That's the web address up there, but there is a discussion which is quite comprehensive on how this algorithm is arrived at. So I suggest you have a read of that if you are interested as to just what is going on, where they can reduce 262 million down to 10,500. In actual case, it seems to work quite well. It may be that you'll get a different set of figures next time you come in and run it, but it seems to be fairly consistent. So go back to the actual back testing itself. I'm just going to pause the video and we'll come back and discuss it as we get to the end of the optimization. Now the backtesting optimization is just completed. You can see that it took 5.5 minutes. And as these results are collated, they're transferred into this particular tab called Optimization Results. Now you can see here that the results are not sorted. I would suggest that you click twice on the profit column and you'll get descending order of profit. Make sure that the little progress bar is right at the top, so you're achieving the best result shown at the top of the list. You don't necessarily need to select the best result for your own trading. It's a matter of personal preference. You can see here that the drawdown on the top result is 8%. It's not a large drawdown, but the one underneath it is only 3.61%. There's a little bit of a difference, probably $200 difference in profit. So you need to be mindful of the various information that you're receiving here. You can see the profit factor's quite high, 3.29 on the best result, and most of these are above 2%. We'll just go ahead for the purposes of the exercise and double click on the top result. By double clicking on the top result, we transfer those values into the expert properties value column. So what we've done is by double clicking, transferred the optimum values into this column here. And you can see that the situation was that it determined the stop loss of 50 and a take profit of 60 was the best. The start hour being 11 a.m., the stop hour being 1300, which is 1 p.m. And the trading start hour should start at 2 p.m. and end at 6 p.m. So once again, to reiterate, we've got a 2-hour period in the past. If we open a trade for 4 hours, between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock, in the past has proven to be quite profitable and in the same direction, the zero being the same. So we'll click on OK. We're going to deselect. If it's selected, it should automatically deselect. And let's have a look at the results on this particular trade using the open prices model. We've got the optimum results. It happens fairly quickly on the open prices only model. Let's have a look at the graph. You can see we've got a return on a 10,000 opening balance of about $2,150. Well, let's click on the report tab. It's actually $2,187. Now, note here is that you've got a complete red bar here, and this is simply an indication that this has only been tested on open prices only. We're going to go back and select on the every tick model in a moment. I just wanted to touch on collection of the actual 5-minute data before we go on to the every tick data. I'll close that off. The easiest way to collect data, your 5-minute data, is firstly you need to do a bit of housekeeping. Go into the Tools directory, select Options, and select Charts, and just make sure that you have, I would suggest a value of 1 million for max bars in history and max bars in chart of 1 million. It's probably set to around 65,500 odd. So you need to change that to 1 million for each, then just press OK. Now, to get this data, you need to deselect the auto scroll button, which is this button here. It's depressed by default. Deselect it. You need to select the chart that you're going to work on. We're working on Euro USD, so we're selecting that chart by clicking the chart area. And now we're going to press the page up button on your keyboard, and this is going to cycle backwards. It's going to happen fairly fast because I already have this data. It may be slower on your platform as you run out of data, and it will progressively collect the data. But let's just see what happens when we press the page up button. You can see it's happening very quickly. When it runs out of data, it will slow down appreciably, but I would suggest you go right back to around about the 10th of March, and that will give you sufficient data to perform your back testing. So you can see mine slowed down there, and I'll just continue to press the page up. We'll see if we can get any more data. Now, it looks like that's the end of the server data here, but you should be able to get back to the 10th of March for data. Now, that's automatically gone into your history. So we'll re-enable that scroll bar again. And that's the way you collect data from your server for back testing purposes. That will automatically be collated into the tester history subdirectory in the form of an FXT file. Let's just talk about that very, very quickly. We'll open the data file and we go into the tester history subdirectory. Now, the history files are FXT files, and by default they have particular names. If we're testing 5-minute data, the 5_0 file is your tick data file. The 5_2 file is the open prices model, and there is also another one which we haven't used, which is a 5_1, which would be created automatically if we're using the lowest possible time frame of history available. That's the intermediate model. I don't advocate using that under normal circumstances. So 50, and you can see that's a large file, is 693 megabytes, and of course this one, which is only the candle data, the open high low close data, is fairly low. It's only 2 megabytes. So that's just a little introduction to collecting your own history data. We'll just go back to our optimization, and as I mentioned, around about $2,200 game. What I'm going to do now is go back, and we're going to use tick data. Now, the reason for using tick data on this back check is that the stop losses and take profits don't necessarily occur at bar start and end. It can occur in between the bar open and close. And of course, tick data has every particular trade that takes place. Now, the easiest way to collect tick data is through a website which I've established called freetickdata.com. And that will give you all the various FXT files. Actually, the data goes right back to 2016, but if you just use the current year and just use the last 3 months, it will give you all that tick data. You don't need to use any supplementary programs such as Tick Story. The FXT files will give you accurate data back testing. So let's go ahead and use the every tick model this time to test the same thing. One point before we start. Tick data, or the FXT files, are in UST or GMT time. So because I'm using on my platform UST +3, I will need to adjust these optimum figures by 3 hours to compensate for the fact that we're using tick data, which is GMT based. So we're going to change that figure to 8. I'm going to change that figure to 10. I'm going to change that figure to 11. I'm going to change that figure to 15. Click on OK. Now, when we perform this test, it'll take a little bit longer, but not much longer. And let's have a look at the graph on this one. We've actually got a slightly, almost an identical result. It's 2,240. It's very, very similar. I think it's probably $100 greater using the tick file. And look at the report. It's actually 2,400, so it's probably $140 greater using the tick file. That just simply is identifying the precise stop, loss, and take profit areas. So that's the use of the tick file. The other thing to note here, of course, is we have 99.9% modeling quality. We're not using a third-party program, so it unfortunately still defaults to ends not applicable there. But the important thing is that we've got a complete green bar there and no mismatch chart areas there. So that's as close as you can get to perfect modeling quality. I'm going to close that off. As I mentioned, we do have other example set files. I won't run through them now, but I'll let you explore them in your own time. Just be mindful that the optimum figures here do relate to my own platform, and the applicable optimization parameters are included with all these set files. The final point I wish to cover is using these set files on a chart. All you simply do is you drag the set file onto your chart. I've already got it there, so I'll stop it and restart it for an example. Drag it onto your chart. Just bear with me for a second. And when it goes onto the chart, the input area will open up. You can see that it only has the value column. Make sure that you're happy with your values and could be the result of a previous optimization you've done, and press OK. You should have a smiley face there. If you don't have a smiley face, either you don't have the auto trading button depressed, or under Tools, Options, you have not enabled the Expert Advisors by selecting these three boxes. Particularly that one there needs to be selected. So if that's selected and the auto trading button is enabled, you should have a smiley face rather than a frowning face there. Look, that completes the video. There's been a fair amount of detailed discussion. As I mentioned at the beginning, pause and rewind if you need clarification. I've put many hours into creating this Expert Advisor and perfecting it, so I would appreciate your purchase. Nevertheless, the forum is there for comments on the Expert Advisor, for any support issues, or for that matter, any issues which you may care to raise on the forum. So please tell your friends about the forum. I would hope that it does gain traction. Look forward to talking to you in the future.